Olabode Sowunmi is an energy analyst. He's also a consultant to the Senate Committee as well as the House Committee on Gas. Welcome to you, buddy, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to be back.
Yes, nice to have you. It's been quite a while.
Yes.
It's been quite a while. Now, I know you listened to MONEYIRE earlier. Like the question I asked him there, I said, why is it really difficult? I cited scenarios, perhaps to help them answer it better.
Yes.
Why is it difficult that the issue of this fuel subsidy continues to recur? Fuel subsidies have been in existence, at least in Nigeria, since the 70s. From Shagari, I think Shagari wanted to take it off. Babangida tried it, I think SAP or so. Who else again tried it? President Jonathan also tried in 2012. So why do you think that Nigerians refuse to wrap their heads around fuel subsidy removal anytime that issue comes up? Is it also because of Nigerians see that fuel subsidy is the only benefit they're getting from the misspent national cake? So why is it a difficult task?
I think, first of all, fuel subsidy is dependent on fluctuations in Forex.
Fuel subsidy is dependent on fluctuations in Forex?
Yes.
Okay.
As it is today, it's largely dependent on that. So basically, because we are not refining, so there's a significant part of the value chain for which we miss benefit from. So yes, we mine and we explore. So when we get the crude oil, we have to transport to a refinery. So there's some cost that I spend there. Then when we get to the refinery, it is refined, obviously. Some cost is spent in refining. Then it is transported back. That's some additional cost. And then before the last mile. So between the two transportation legs, as well as the refining, there is an amount that has to be spent. Whether it is spent by cash or whether it is spent by some crude oil exchange, some money needs to be spent. It is that cost that puts pressure on the Naira that determines Forex cost. However, it's not that simple. So there are some other issues, very key issues, for which there isn't significant transparency and which is not dependent on the forces of demand and supply as it should.
Oh, so from what you've said right now, there's been lack of transparency around that opaqueness around the issue of subsidies. That's why Nigerians are agitated. Like I said earlier,
yes,
the scenarios I created for the government officials to answer, Minister Zainab Ahmed of Finance and MONEYIRE of NNPC Limited, was that I did create the scenario. Is it about political willingness, why it's difficult to remove? Is it about political willingness, or is it about they don't know how to appease Nigerians? President Jonathan tried it in 2012. Check out Occupy Lagos, Occupy Nigeria. These same people in the administration were, were there. Don't take off the subsidies. Is it also about lack of trust by Nigerians? And with the other angle which you brought in now is the area of transparency.
I think it's multifactorial. So it's not as, so you have a cancer patient who has diabetes, who also has high blood pressure and all that. So you are now going to say, what is the almighty drug that will cure him? It's not so simple. So you can have the political winners. There has to be.
But that's such a, I didn't think of it like that. You just brought in like a cancer patient that has diabetes, that has every other thing.
Yes,
not one drug will cure.
Exactly.
So you're liking the Nigerian situation now too.
Yes, so the fuel subsidy is one of the symptoms. So that patient, if he has a headache, that headache could be from high blood pressure. It could also be from diabetes. It could also be from cancer. But it's headache. So it comes out as a symptom. But that symptom is rooted in other factors. But one of the fundamental things that needs to be done is that the calculation and the basis for computing the subsidy needs to be made available to everyone. Not because of any other issue, but so that Nigerians can independently and individually go in there, compute those figures, compare it with what is international. Because really, if Nigerians are convinced, educated people are like that, if people are convinced that this really is the issues, they become easy to lead. But when the factors are opaque, when the substance that is at the foundation of these things are such that it becomes a matter of faith, FATE, where we just need to believe what the government says, then there will come conspiracy theories, then there will come unnecessary agitations within the people. So the first thing is that there must be open and transparent knowledge. That's the first thing. Then there must be a democratization in terms of any process where you really want to privatize, especially a process that is so foundational to the economy. The issues, the factors that fuel subsidy, increase in fuel price control are just too many. And when such things are going to happen, it is not just about doing the right things. It is about being seen to be doing the right things. So there's a need for such extreme transparency in those factors. And it is then that independent groups, even groups that government are not thinking of, could rise up in their defense. So there is, it begins first with transparency. People need to compute the cost of subsidy independent of what government sources are saying.
You know, let's take it from what you've just said now in terms of that transparency and the computation to know how much subsidy. If you take a look at general economic assumptions, PMS consumption should follow the trends in GDP.
True.
If you're growing as a country, you have a high growth in GDP, PMS consumption should increase, more people are buying cars, more people are getting productive, they're getting salaries and all of that. But if you take a look, for example, let me go back to 2016 when we had a sharp drop in GDP. We were in a recession in 2016. We also entered a recession in 2020. If you take a look at PMS consumption, there was an increase. So that means there was an increase in subsidy. So I'm just trying to,
put some sense.
Yes, what you're just saying in terms of that transparency. So why are we even seeing those kind of scenarios, which the World Bank also pointed out at the launch?
Well, you are the investigative journalist.
So no, I'm asking because you're an analyst. So I will not give my own answers here.
Yeah, but basically, some of these things are just pure maths. Even the blind can see. So basically, you don't need to be an expert to do some of these things. So the cost factors that determine these things are known. But and some of these things are international pricing. So, the cost of crude oil is international. The cost of transportation is international. The cost of refining is international. So the cost of getting the PMS to our doorsteps are crises that can be checked internationally. And we're talking about a commodity here. Crude oil is a commodity. So the factors that are not international, which are the ones that are even naira dependent, are the cost between when it lands offshore and when it arrives on our doorsteps, the last mile. So which is where the tanker drivers comes in and all that and all that. So really, some of these things need to be made available in terms of whatever formula that the government is using to compute those things. That way, people can know. And then, very importantly, especially when you're saying you're deregulating, they need to make it available for as many people as can to import. Because you see, deregulation is a basic fundamental principle of economics. However, deregulation within an environment of competition.
So if the government will make it, give that access now for every other person to import, I think which they stopped in 2016 because fuel marketers were doing that, and they stopped it because we know what happened, the briefcase people, some people I think are in courts over those issues. That means with what you've just said, pump price will not be at 165 because some people may bring it and they may sell it at 300, some may sell it at 270, some may sell it at 320.
Yeah, but that's the principle
of
a free market.
Free market.
Because you see, there
but
has
that's
to be
what Nigerians are saying now that we don't want.
But they don't want that because there isn't sufficient knowledge on how these things will work. Because you can have a group of marketers and it will still be a clique.
Which it was before.
Exactly. So we need to move it from being a clique
and we take
to something that is
to governments to reimburse them.
Exactly, which is that is the subsidy part. So if you are totally removing subsidy, it must be such that even I can import my fuel. So because you see, we're talking about basic economic fundamentals here. So, and in going to those fundamentals, the principles of economics, which are the same in every industry, needs to be obeyed.
So the question now is that how do you think government can sell this? How can it be sold to Nigerians that fuel subsidy has placed an unnecessary financial burden on the economy? making the pocket bleed, and the government is saying, okay, fine, we're going to take off that so that we can have money. In fact, at the launch, startling figures were given that oil revenue, about 4 trillion naira of oil revenue last year. 1 trillion naira, over 1 trillion naira of it is used for subsidy. So the government is saying, guys, we don't have money because we are borrowing money to pay salaries and subsidize the budget. We have a 6.9 trillion naira fiscal deficit last year. So if we take that 1 trillion, we can use it to provide other things.
Amazing things.
And
but
5K grants, which I'll come back to later. Yeah.
So
how
I think first of all, there is, with all due respect to the beautiful work that government may be doing or may not be doing, there are certain agencies or structures of governance that are not being maximized. Take, for example, the National Orientation Agency. One of their reasons is to distill to the last mile, to the bottom of the pyramid, the very factors of what matters. Why are there no discussions in the town halls of our little towns and our villages on democracy? Why do people think that we cannot discuss fuel subsidy in the villages and discuss the fundamentals? Because you see, it is the people who are in the villages who make up the bulk of the population.
The people in the villages that use fuel?
Everybody uses fuel.
Now, is it the people in the village? Because the poor will not have cars.
No, I understand that.
They
but the point I'm trying to make is that...
They use kerosene, which is deregulated. The big guys use diesel, which is already deregulated.
It is the same principle.
Or
so the whole idea now is that government needs a critical mass of the population to understand what is going on. Because when they understand what is going on, then they can agree without feeling that they are being bamboozled. So we need to look at the fundamentals and be discussing it. There is hardly any town that does not have a town hall. Look, what I'm talking about is how the Americans use to distill critical information. There are virtually every single hamlet and town and county in the US gets discussions taking place in their town halls. So government needs to have discussions, whichever way was possible. So the National Orientation has this fantastic budget, and I'm sure they are doing wonderful work, but they need to do more, such that the critical things that are essential to governance need to be distilled to the people. And this is where, so you a few weeks ago, we went to Delta State, by the way. I visited every major town in Delta. I was in Asaba, I was in Orozo, I was in Warri. It was a power plant that is being developed there, which we were consulting. So, but you see all these beautiful people. You see people who are likely to say innocent to the shenanigans and the conspiracies that are taking place. You see people who, over their own head, discussions are being made about the PIA and all of that, who may not actually understand the fundamentals. So the issue is that when you go, and this is not peculiar to Delta, you have Taraba, you have Ogun State, you have Sokoto, you have Zamfara, you have all these places. So you have these town halls that they have. What are the fundamentals of the Nigerian entity that they don't understand? Bring this thing up. Discuss it in local languages. Let you hear contributions from people. Because once the people do not understand, you will always have a difficulty. It's like a parent bringing up a child.
Now, do you think, and I don't want us to dwell so much on this, I know it's quite important because I also want to take a look at other technical aspects. Do you think it's just about selling it to Nigerians and telling them, oh, this does not make economic sense now? Do you think Nigerians will still believe? Because some people will know, some people will know that this doesn't make any economic sense again. The country is bleeding. But they will refuse and say, no.
You see,
do you understand? Even like Labour will say, okay, these are alternatives. You shouldn't do until our refineries are built, are rehabilitated, or whatever word they want to use. It shouldn't be this until this is done. You cannot remove subsidy until we have additional wage increase. Governor El-Rufai at the event also did say clearly, he was saying it, that if it's not removed, this and this, we will not be able to pay salaries. We will not be able to pay salary. We will not be able to pay. And I was like, come on. Governance is about more than paying salaries. About how do you generate internal revenue in your state?
Well, these things are true. But what Governor El-Rufai said, how many people in Kaduna heard? I'm talking about Kafanchan. I'm talking about Kachia. I'm talking about Zaria. I grew up in Kaduna, so I may be familiar with the place. The point is, in these local, disconnected parts to governance, there isn't information distilling there. And until these people know, you know, first of all, I don't know for certain if the people are going to accept, but until they know, you will never know. But what I am basing this on is on the genuineness of humanity.
How do you think, sorry to cut you short, because I'm also looking at the time, how do you think this should be addressed? Are you for subsidy removal or not? I've also spoken to a lot of people in the last few weeks. Someone told me, Nancy, it should be removed, but it should be faced. Let's have it in faces. Someone said, okay, reform. Someone say, no, don't take it away.
No, so I would rather put it for like this, and for the right thing to be done.
Which
now,
is?
The right thing, ultimately, I'm using the word carefully now, ultimately is the removal of subsidy. But there needs to be other right things that should be done before the subsidy is removed. So it is the interplay of the right things being done that is where competence in governance comes in. The first thing is that you must communicate with people. And that is a responsibility of government. You must communicate. I mean, that's why there's leadership. You must communicate with people. That is the first thing. Then you need to get input from people on the alternative and the options going forward.
There's engagement.
There must be, because that is governance. The governance is not about doing the right thing where nobody knows. It's like you compare with the entrepreneur. You have this wonderful product, but nobody knows. You're advertising and winking in the dark, and nobody knows what you're doing. So for a long time, it didn't matter. But now it does matter because you cannot get away with it. Part of governance requires fundamentally that the people who are being governed are in tune with the processes of governance. And that's why I give the example of the American town hall meetings. We give the example of the UK government town hall meetings, which were some of the things that were being done pre-independence. So there was a need to communicate to the very bottom of the pyramid. Because if government has the support of the bottom of the pyramid, it doesn't matter what the elite says. Because they will now be in foundation. So they need to distill critical information there. The truth be told, the economy must work on the basis of the free market for the economy to move forward. Otherwise, you will have the best of knowledge, the best of principles, and they won't be able to work simply because you cannot pass the information forward. There are many people who are antagonistic to right things being done because they benefit from the inefficiencies of the system. But the reason why those people appear so powerful is because the crux, the foundation, the bulk of society are not aware of what is happening.
Let's take a look at this transport grant. The minister has said 5,000 naira to poor Nigerians to help cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. So about 40 million Nigerians hopefully would have that. And I tried to do my calculation this morning. 40 million Nigerians times 5,000 naira. That is 200 billion naira a month. And when I did it in a year, I got 2.4 trillion naira. Is that the best way? And how will government sustain that? Because if you're going to give a grant of 2.4 trillion naira, it's a form of subsidy.
Yes.
Because you're taking off the fuel subsidy that cost us trillions trillions of naira, about 300 million dollars, you know, about 120 or 132 billion naira a month. So it's like you're robbing Peter to, I don't understand. I'm trying to understand that economically, if it makes sense, and if that is the best way to go.
You know, let me put it this way with this little story. In 1999, pre-1999, for those who are old enough and remember, Nigeria used to be bedeviled with lack of fuel. There used to be long queues all over the nation. In fact, people didn't believe that fuel queues could go. But it took, one of the things that was done with the democratic government that came in 99 was that the whole set of people who were in charge of those things were removed. It was an avalanche of people that went. And within weeks, in fact days, the concept of fuel subsidy, the concept of fuel queues disappeared. And I remembered in 99, later that year, it was the late Alex Ekweme who was on TV that was mentioning one of the benefits that the government has done, or what democracy had done, that there was no more fuel queues. It doesn't take too much intelligence to know that there are critical forces who are interested in subsidy. You don't need to analyze long to see it. So there needs to be a sincere look at some of these things, because does the nation need to collapse before we realize that things need to be done differently? But that's a question for those who are concerned to answer. With all due respect to the genius that came up with the concept of 5,000 naira for every single person, but there are some questions they ought to ask.
I don't think you'll be part of it, too. So it's not every single person.
No. Yes. But it really wouldn't matter so much. So is it possible that such cash in the economy can cause inflation? Is it possible that there is a verifiable and proper database for that, so that we don't have EFCC matters coming up from the next few weeks after the thing starts? Is it possible that, there are factors they need to ask? But that aside, the issue of the benefit of removal of subsidy is for that trillion to be used on infrastructure. The
question Nigerians are asking, if you remove it, how are we sure that it's going to be spent? That's the grouse, really.
Which is part of the reason where there needs to be sufficient discussion with Nigerians to understand how government processes work. Because when they understand how government processes work, it becomes incumbent upon them, and it becomes part of their own responsibility as Nigerians to governance to monitor it.
As we round up, where does it put the PIA and its provision for non-payment of subsidy, really? Because even in the PIA, it should be removed, I think, February 2022, which is almost here.
Okay.
And the minister did also say that, okay, fine, it could be extended to June or something, but next year, from the PIA, which the president has signed, it shouldn't be there.
Well, the truth be told, laws are made for man and not man for laws. So the PIA basically is a structure that is supposed to enable the oil and gas industry work in a better way. Unfortunately, the PIA looks a little more at the fundamentals, so it looks at the people who are involved in the exploration. It looks at it looks as a place for gas. It puts a whole set of laws there so that all that has been leaking there, the billions, I mean, there are actually billions of dollars leaking as a result of lack of proper gas laws, can be checked and all of that. Removal of fuel subsidy is not just a technical issue. It is not just an economic issue. It is technical, economic, and political. So you are not going to use that. You are not going to look at only the economic issues to make the decision. Otherwise, those decisions will have been made. You are not going to look at the technical issues alone to make the decision, and you are not going to look at politics alone. So it is going to take an intelligent group of people, an intelligent mind, that is going to put a complicated interactions, that will take complicated interactions between those factors to make the right decision. Like I said before, the removal of fuel subsidy is ultimately the right thing. However, there are a number of steps that needs to be taken before that right thing is done.
It's done. But I hope we had a lot more time. But our promise of viewers will continue to interrogate this, because there are so many questions to be asked. Last week, President Biden says, oh, we're going to pump in strategic reserves. I guess you would have seen the news.
Yes, but
OPEC told Biden, do your own, don't carry other people along. So you can imagine those kind of global activities or global stories and how it will impact here. Oil price is over $70 US.
Yeah.
Are we even getting the benefits of increased oil prices?
Which is where, at the core of everything, transparency is critical.
It's key.
And that is why Nigerians must continue to put and interrogate and put pressure on the transparency of that process, so that at times like this, the nation benefits rather than suffer more.
And if it goes low, petrol should be lower to an extent. Okay. Anyway, we have so many things to talk about, and we need to, peel, as you're peeling onions, you're taking off the layers and see if we can get to the bottom of it. Thank you very much, Buddy, for showing up.
Thank you.
And
it's
Merry Christmas, in case we don't see physically.
Again.
And not just about the phone before Christmas or before the holidays. All right, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I've been speaking with Olabode Sowunmi, who is an energy analyst and a consultant to the Senate and House committees on gas. I promise you've not heard the last of it concerning the pros and the cons of fuel subsidy on this program. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.